you've got an amazing way to make a very serious topic so exciting.
So here's the thing: we tend to think that people reason and then make a decision based on the reasoning that they've done. But most of the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis are not conscious decisions.
I mean, we've had investigations where literally the clients called us and said, look, my financial director's just disappeared. I tried to make a payment of like 4 million rand. I don't have 4 million in my bank account.
Yeah.
Come find out what's happened.
Trust in business is one of the most important things. And apparently the recipe for trust is competence and ethics. But we work on competence all the time, but we assume the ethics side.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the People Desk podcast. I'm Vaughan Botha, and I'll be facilitating today's session. So in our first episode, we spoke to Rudolf Strauly from the Lions about talent management, and then we spoke to Ntabi Singh from Leroy Merlin about learning and development. And gentlemen, we're taking quite a nasty turn to fraud and ethics. So much for the fluffy topics. But Zunaid and Dr. Skalk, I'm going to call you Skalk from this point onwards. Welcome and thank you very much for collaborating with us on this very, very insightful topic. Zunaid, I'm going to start with you. So started off in a software space, then moved over to KPMG, headed up the data analytics and forensic team there. And over the past 7 or 8 years, heading up the BI strategy in Digicall. Really insightful to have you on this session, and I know you and Skalk also has some history, which we'll delve into just in a second.
History, professional.
Professional.
There's two versions of this podcast, so welcome and thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, Vaughan. Seriously.
I must say, over the past 18 odd months, I've had first-hand experience with you and your team, your BI team, in particular, your team helping us with our payroll fraud analytical capabilities. And I think it's just exhilarating for me to see how vastly two different disciplines can come together and the magic that we've made there. And excited about the future as well. Even our managing director shared an article with me the other day where firms somewhere in the States are anticipating merging their HR and IT departments. And so initially I thought, wow, okay, how does that work? But the principle is that there's so much technology that enhances people practices and how they want those two departments to work closely together. And I think that's what we're not just sitting in the same office, but it really creates that collaboration, which I think is magic. So
No, absolutely. I mean, my team and I are spending lots of time with our HR departments as well.
So
in fact, I think our HR manager joked that I'm joining them.
yeah.
But I mean, it's many of you are said in jest, right?
Yeah. But I don't think many companies, we're fortunate to have this capability, obviously, internally, Skalk, you guys at KPMG as well, but to really explore and to see, what you can do. It's similar to what we're seeing with AI now at this moment as well. Doing it ethically, though, so, we'll get to that topic.
That's possible.
Skalk, then I'm going to turn to you. I mean, you started your career in the academic space, philosophy, at Potch, I think it was.
I studied at Stellenbosch and I lectured at Stellenbosch for a while and then moved over to Northwest University for my sins.
We've got Prof. Linda actually lectures that side, phenomenal lecturer, so, on the laboral side. Then moved to KPMG. That's where the two of you started working together.
Yeah.
You worked in the forensic department there as well?
Yeah.
And then subsequent to that, moved into the role of CEO, KPMG.
Okay. Full guy, yeah. Chief Ethics Officer.
Okay. I'm just testing you.
No, I don't make any decisions. Don't worry.
What does the life of a Chief Ethics Officer look like? I mean, a lot of our audience might be smaller companies. They might not have the capabilities and might be thinking, wow, what does that entail? But when you spoke about it so vividly, about it being part of your business culture, just if you can take us to that.
Yeah, okay. A bit of the history. So I studied philosophy and applied ethics, and I lectured that, and by accident landed up at an audit firm. I stopped doing accounting in Standard 7, actually. So my parents were very excited when I actually got employed. They were worried when I started studying philosophy that this one this one's going to stay at home. We're going to have to feed this one for the rest of his life. But so the way that I ended up in forensic was, I think KPMG they had a bit of insight. I think a pioneer in the forensic space, and they started out just doing forensic investigations, and then realized, but whenever there's a fraud, organizations ask, but how could this have happened? Yeah, and can it happen again? Yeah. And so we started working on the prevention side as well. And part of that prevention is obviously looking at financial controls, but they also then realized very soon that financial controls aren't a guarantee. So they said, maybe you need to look at ethics at the environment as well. That's how I landed up in KPMG, as a kind of a business ethics consultant to our clients. Okay. But then in 2017, 2018, we had our own challenges, and we realized that maybe we want to have more of a laser focus on ethics in KPMG. Yeah. So I moved over to risk management with the job of looking after the ethics program. With this title of Chief Ethics Officer, which, I mean, there's only one of us. So you're chief of yourself, really. But so our ethics program has three goals. The first one is to enhance or to maintain the ethics skills of the people in our organization. We don't build cars. We don't sell clothes. We sell expertise. So our people is where our value is, but also where our risk is. Yeah. And an audit firm, accounting firm, that's really about serving the public interest through a combination of competence, but also ethics. Yeah. Your audit is only as good as the character of the people doing the audit. Yeah. So and often, trust in business is one of the most important things. Yeah. And apparently the recipe for trust is competence and ethics. But we work on competence all the time. We have people training on, are you maintaining your professional competence? But we assume the ethics side. Yeah, and we're saying maybe ethics is a skill or a muscle that you have to maintain, just like anything else. So we work on that, on maintaining the ethics skills of the people who work in our organization, and I think we'll talk about this later. But the second part is, it doesn't help that you have ethically competent people in an environment that isn't conducive to ethics. Yeah. So the second part is looking after the culture and asking, does this culture help people to do the right thing? Sure. And thirdly, we also try and participate in the profession to be a bit self-reflexive about the ethics of the profession. Every profession has unique ethics challenges. In healthcare now, there are questions about assisted dying. Yes. As an ethical doctor, should I participate in assisted dying? And so in audit and in accounting, you also have that. So we also like to participate in those discussions, the ethics of the profession. So those are the kind of three things. But if you ask me what I do, talking, lots of talking.
Podcast, I really like
it. Hang around and talk on podcast. This isn't being recorded.
Yeah. It's interesting how, I mean, two things. Sinead, from your background, being software, data analytics, Skulk, your side, academics, my side, HR, how all three in this podcast comes together. And, something that you spoke about was that golden thread, where even to myself, you would think that compliance and risk and ethics, it's this department that sits there somewhere in the old building. But you spoke so enthusiastically about how this is part of everybody's job, no matter the level of appointment or what you're doing at that moment. Can you maybe share that with me?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's a risk with internal audit, with forensic, with risk management as well, that one thinks we have that sorted because there's a part of the business who's responsible for that, and our view is it doesn't. If you try and patch ethics on at the end, it's not going to work. You don't want ethics to be responsible for ethics. You want everyone to be responsible for ethics. So part of the purpose of an ethics program is to get everyone to be the conscience of the organization. I have this little analogy that I like to use, and that is, I don't know if you've ever been curious. Before you take off on an airplane, they're always saying you have to remove your earphones and you have to have the window open. And I'm like, why do you need me involved in this? And apparently, I asked once, apparently it's because you're part of the risk management on a plane. If there's something, the pilot is looking at the runway. They're looking ahead. They're not looking if the wing is on fire or whatever. So they want you alert.
Wow.
They're not telling you, listen, you're part of the risk management, but they want you alert at those. And I think that's what you kind of want in an organization as well. The CEO is looking at the strategy, but you're part of the kind of the vigilance, the ethics, the conscience of the organization. That's the ideal.
That is absolutely phenomenal. And making everybody aware and giving them an opportunity or a safe space almost to say, listen, something's wrong, and how do we do it? Interesting. Does a lot of it, is it only internally focused at KPMG? So are you just doing it for KPMG or are you consulting?
No, we consult as well. I think when I moved over, I thought this was the dream come true. I don't have to chase fees anymore. I can now do this work internally. But no one else scored onto this. So I often still get phone calls saying, listen, we're busy with an internal audit and they want to look at the culture in there. Or this client of ours wants ethics training. So we still consult as well. And in fact, having to do it myself, because the consulting world's wonderful. Normally you write a report, you go to the board and say, do this, and you walk away. But now I drop a report in KPMG and say, do this, and then in 3 months they ask me, have you done it yet? Has it worked? I was like, what do you mean has it worked? I do recommendations. I don't do. So having to kind of implement these things yourself helps you kind of with the consulting side as well.
It's such a valid point you make. In consulting, we often have the same experience. You don't always see the loop close or the end result almost. So to be part of that entire journey is absolutely phenomenal. You've got an amazing way to make a very serious topic so exciting. Even my wife, when I was listening to your previous podcast, it's discussion. It creates a discussion, and I think an awareness of we're not really focusing enough on this. So to come to your side, Sinead, we're talking fraud and ethics now and HR. Now your team on the system analytical or the analytical part of the business comes in. How do you see your part, of like what Skulk said, is that golden thread throughout the business in your role, obviously, in Digicall as well?
I think maybe when you started off at KPMG, I was there at the beginning of kind of the forensic data analytics division, which was nice because it wasn't anything formalized at the time. And I think the principle behind it was that you have audits where, you go and you sample transactions and really, you're looking for needles in the haystack.
Yeah.
And forensic data analytics was the idea of saying, well, if I look at the entire population of everything that's happening, and if I look at patterns, surely at some point I pick up when something's not right. And that's really what we did and what we do. And that's something that, we applied it in the forensic world, but you apply it in similar ways at Digicall. So, in our BI space, we look at it, you would know in our HR consulting, we look at it from a fraud perspective, from internally, I do the same thing. But at the same time, we can look at effectiveness of operations, where are we doing things right, where are we doing things wrong. So ultimately, it all boils down to looking at the entire picture, which you have to have an analytical mindset, and you have to have the underlying raw data as raw as you can get, as granular as you can get in an organization to be able to draw those sort of pictures. And it's fascinating. I think that's when I left forensic. You sit in forensic and you have all of the stories. You get the nice stories you can tell around, the ones you can tell, the ones you embellish a little bit. But they don't need embellishing, to be fair, and you see so many different things. And when I moved out of it, and I thought, maybe I'll be bored. Honestly, you're not, because that data just, for me, I'm passionate about data, and I'm passionate about what it can do. And the stories it tells pretty much apply to anything.
Absolutely. And it's the preventative side to me that I think appeals to me.
Yeah.
From a labor law perspective, we're very much that it's an ER room, so you just fix it and then move on, eliminate risk. And we've always kind of felt that we're behind the curve. In all your cases, you know there's damages. There's very seldom the opportunity to reclaim some of the damages, and that's where my job ends. So yeah, you know, we've eliminated the risk and you know, continue. Whereas what the two of you are saying is that one, there's capabilities to try to prevent this, because that's what we want to try to do at the end of the day in various disciplines. So it's not just one department there, you know, they're in a corner somewhere. Yeah.
And it's exactly that, the proactive part of it. And I think the difficulty that a lot of organizations face is, or kind of almost self-inflicted, is they don't consider themselves vulnerable to fraud. It's kind of something that happens to others.
Yeah, exactly.
So why bother with the proactive element until it happens to them?
Yeah.
And we've seen it a lot in our in my previous life.
But there is a sentiment like that, eh? You know, everybody kind of thinks it won't happen to me. It's just somebody else's bad horror story until it happens to you. You know? So, as part of your awareness, so I've taken note now. So you say that there's an awareness element to it, and then there's obviously creating an environment where you can pick those things up. Awareness side, is it a lot of training, coaching, a lot of material for you know, that you'll share and so forth, or you know, what does it look like?
Yeah, so just to latch on to what my overeducated colleague Desmond has been saying, we used to joke, and well, we didn't used to joke. I remember one of the partners used to say, your best patient is in intensive care.
Okay.
You know, it's if you've just had a heart attack, then you're like, I'm going to start exercising.
Yes.
I'm going to stop. I'm going to eat less red meat. All of those kind of things. So unfortunately, that it's only after something's happened that you realize it can actually happen to us. But if that was kind of part of every organization's modus operandi, that would be a whole lot better. So on the awareness, it's okay. So part of it might be awareness. Part of it, what I've been calling ethics skills, is you want people to be able to. There's a host of ethics skills, but the first one is, let's call it moral sensitivity. Your ability to recognize that this decision I'm making here isn't just a technical decision or a commercial decision. There's an ethics component to it. And sometimes people, I think some forms of fraud are born of ignorance, of thinking, but everyone does this in this type of environment. So there's a bit of awareness, but part of that skill is being able to recognize here's an ethics concern. The second is then being able to, what you can call moral judgment, your ability to say this is right or this is wrong. And then the third is moral reasoning, being able to justify why this is right or this is wrong, so that you can tell people beforehand, this is wrong, we shouldn't do it. Or afterwards, when journalist comes and asks, why did your organization decide to do this? You can say, we have thought about it. This was our moral kind of justification. So those things are all part of the ethics skills. You were saying earlier that people find it sometimes a dry topic, and ethics can be. I mean, first of all, because it can be preachy. Thou shalt not, and people are like, here's the here's the dominie's son coming to kind of. So it can be preachy, but we also tend to choke the life out of ethics by converting it into necessary codes of conduct that's about conflicts of interest rules and gift rules. And in the process, people forget ethics is a couple of simple questions. Simple, fundamental questions. I tell people, if you're a human being, there can't be a more important and a more interesting subject than ethics, because in ethics we ask, what does it mean to be a good person? Which mostly isn't the question we ask in our 20s and our 30s. Then we're asking, am I popular? Am I successful? It's only in your, I don't know, I'm going towards 5 decades now, but later when the darkness comes closer, then we start asking, was I a good person? You know? But also, how can I know what's right and wrong? What do I owe other people? And how should I live? You know, that's where it starts. And from that, you have your conflicts of interest. Now, if you can get people into asking those questions and then applying it to your business environment. So I ask our people, when I do ethics training, I start with questions like, is password sharing with streaming services, is that ethical or unethical? I ask people, if there's a thunderstorm in Joburg, is it morally permissible to order Uber Eats? You know, so that's where you start, and from there you can start working on. Okay, let's bring it to the business. What's morally how do we think about these things? So getting people to kind of be sensitive, that's the skills part. Then the environment part is, it doesn't help you have people that recognize ethics concerns, say this is wrong, but when they say something, they're retaliated against, or they are ignored. So for that, you need to, the biggest impact, it's been said to death because it's true, and that is how your leaders behave and what they say. Well, first what they say and then how they behave. And if they talk about ethics enough, then it becomes normal for everyone else to talk about ethics. And then, of course, you need things like enforcement. We've said it now. If someone does something wrong, do we kind of ignore it? Or don't we? And we can talk about that when we talk about kind of different kinds of fraud and the consequences of fraud. But so having that, what's called tone at the top, and then making sure that your standards are actually enforced and that people feel comfortable talking about ethics, and then speak up is something different. Talking about ethics is this right? Is this not right? Speak up is being able to say, listen, I know that someone's done something wrong, and I want to report.
And there's two elements to that is extremely interesting for me. In our previous discussions, you spoke about how you've got to almost train your employees to make the right decisions in those critical periods. And, we also spoke about, it's obvious, you would think, why do people make the wrong decisions? It seems obvious to the person not in that moment, but as you said, in that moment, they fail to have the ability to discern between what's right or wrong, or making the right thing. But if you can maybe tell me, from an HR perspective, how interesting it is, how do we teach our employees or prime them to make the right decision in those vital moments?
First, from my academic nature, I'm going to overcomplicate it first, and then I'll try and kind of simplify it. But so there's a couple
of... It's like consulting, It's
exactly.
He's charging an hour.
Exactly. So here's the thing. We tend to think that people reason and then make a decision based on the reasoning that they've done. But most of the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis are not conscious decisions. Now, what we try and teach people, or what ethics to an extent is getting into the habit of asking, is it right, is it good, and is it virtuous, or is it fitting? What does that mean? Is it right? Is it in line with rules, laws, duties? Is it good? Here's the academic in me, am I maximizing aggregate utility, or put in a different way, is this decision bringing more good in the world than bad? If we look at harms and benefits, which decision will have the best outcome for everyone?
Everybody is, and that's I want to come back to that.
We're going to come when we talk about business and its responsibilities. And the third is it virtuous, or is it fitting? Where we're not asking, is it in line with rules, or what are the harms and benefits? But we're asking, what does this say about me? Am I demonstrating character? Am I demonstrating things that we think are good character traits, like integrity, fairness, those kinds of things? Now you get people to start thinking in those terms and being able to see the world in terms of harms and benefits, rules and duties, and virtues and vices. But when we make our decisions on a day-to-day basis, we don't get out the chart and start saying, what are the consequences? Does anyone know the regulatory universe? Is this we're making automatic decisions based on other things, based on habit, based on what everyone else does, based on what's been the focus. We need to make target, we're behind budget, those kind of pressures. So yes, I like to get people thinking about and talking about ethics, but probably what you want to do. And I'm just thinking, we've been talking about the Lions and rugby and those things. I don't think the scrum half is stopping and thinking what's going to be the best. I think there's an automated response from training that situation over and over and over again, like a violinist plays a song over. So they're not reading the music anymore. It's second nature. So you kind of want people, if you know what your conduct risks are in our environment, you might be tempted to price fixing, to reckless selling, to giving proprietary information away. In that moment, what's the expected behavior? And if you can train people that scenario-based training beforehand, then that's potentially...
It's like with the Springboks, when they play a minnow team, they're not put under so much pressure, so you've got more time to make decisions. It's more confidence. You're not really in a uncomfortable space, but play against the All Blacks, or you're 5 behind with 10 minutes to go, all of a sudden it just becomes so much more difficult to make those vital decisions. Is it a similar analogy? Would you say
I
it's
think
right?
so. I think in that situation, you hope that the decision was made beforehand.
Yes.
I'm thinking of another analogy, and that's just getting up in the mornings to go for a run.
Yeah.
If you're waiting till the alarm goes off to decide, am I going to run today or not? You're not going to go
That's
for a run.
it, yeah.
You must have decided last night and put out your running clothes
already prepared,
ready prepared, and you almost don't have a decision. You've told people, listen, I'll find you at 5 a.m. for that run.
Yeah.
If you're making the decision there, you're kind of already in trouble.
It's too late.
And kind of the fraud decision must have been made beforehand.
Yeah. Hence why I think, we spoke about companies being ignorant about their risk, and would this really happen to me? We've got to accept that this is a material risk, and this is large and small companies. This is not just for for the big corporates essentially. So which is very interesting. Can I ask you a question? So, why do good people then make bad decisions? Is there something specifically that leads to it, or does the environment play such a great role? To put so much pressure on employees, and that we're not equipping them enough.
There's a couple of answers to this, I think, and the research that KPMG did about the global profiles of the fraudster might give us some ideas as well. But the common wisdom is apples, barrels, sticky situations. So the three reasons people do unethical things is either bad apples, bad barrels, or sticky situations. So you might do something bad because that was your motivation. Your idea wasn't what's the right thing to do here. You were out of greed or self-interest and from what I saw from the global profiles of a fraudster, a lot of fraud is
self-interest.
Self-interest is almost wanted to start talking about Hansi, but maybe it's still too painful. But the second is barrels. So maybe the apple isn't bad, but the environment it finds itself in makes it very difficult. There's a fairly famous case study, the Wells Fargo case study. It's a retail bank that, I'm going to lie now, 2015, 2016, they found out that something like 5,000 employees had all done the same thing. They'd opened up dummy accounts for their retail clients without telling their clients, without getting consent. Why would someone do that? Well, the reason was you have to open up so many new accounts, whether it's check accounts or whatever, because the strategy was getting a new client in a bank is difficult, but getting an existing client to get an extra is easier. So they were incentivized, but also kind of threatened, like, this is your target. If you don't meet the target, there's... And the famous saying by the CEO, whenever he spoke to his employees, was 8 is great. And what he meant by that is every one of our clients should have 8 products with us. Now, why do I mention this? Because if 5,000 people participated in this, and it had consequences, people didn't know that they had now 3 or 4 other accounts with the bank that they've been banking with. And sometimes some of their funds from their existing account would be used to kind of pay the banking fees on those. And some, like retirees, would go into the black, not into the black, into the red. The black is good, right?
Yep.
Yes. I'm in ethics. I'm not in banking. But so it had consequences. Now, why would people and often what leaders in those situations would say is bad apples. A couple of low-level employees who went rogue. It was like 5,000 employees. So that's why the environment then, when they started looking at it, people were put under immense pressure. But also, when you find out what seems to you wrong, but you find out, but a lot of other people are doing it, people that you work with, that the normalization of deviance, they call it. Then that barrel starts telling you, good people then start doing unethical things. And sometimes the situations just, for whatever reason, you're in a sticky situation that might cause this. So that's kind of the common wisdom around why people do unethical things. But from an ethics perspective, what's interesting for me is the good old fraud triangle of opportunity, rationalization,
Motivation.
motivation. So the rationalization that I like to call after a guy called Albert Bandura, moral disengagement. An important thing that has to happen is most of us, fraudsters including, want to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm an ethical person. I'm a good person.
Yeah.
So what needs to happen for you to commit fraud in a sustained way is you need to short circuit that part of you that says this is wrong, your self-regulatory ethical mechanism.
Yeah.
And that happens through rationalization or moral disengagement. You can have a variety of strategies for doing that.
Yeah.
You can tell yourself, I'm not really hurting anyone.
Yeah.
You can tell yourself, this isn't fraud, this is justice. This company's been stealing from me. You can tell yourself the victim is actually to blame.
Yeah.
They deserve it.
Even employees I read as well that are treated poorly can rationalize to say, you know what, it's time to get even a little bit.
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
going to be that bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, exactly. You're not a terrorist. You're a freedom fighter,
Yes,
right? So in the
yes.
same way, I'm not a fraudster. This is a quest for justice
Yeah.
in a situation where I've been treated unfairly. So these strategies can either be I redescribe what I'm doing. I redescribe the agent. I can tell I'm not doing this. I was told by my manager to do it, so I'm not responsible. Or you redescribe the consequences. No one's getting hurt. It's just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Or you redescribe the victim, saying they're not the victim. They deserve this.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting though, Zunaid, you mentioned now KPMG's, so obviously KPMG started this report, the profile of a fraudster. And Zunaid, you were part of that first initial draft, I think, in 2016.
I think that was the third one. Yeah.
Third
but
one,
yeah. So there was one like, I think 2013, 2010, 2016, where the South African practice was heavily involved in it. So
Bedtime reading story for me. I just love that. So maybe if you can just tell us what was your part in it and maybe just some of the insights that you got into it.
Sure. So, I mean, the South African practice, I think at the time, the global head of forensic was a South African partner. And we played, I think, the biggest part in putting that together in conjunction with forensic practices around the world. So effectively what it was is looking at, I think it was like 700 odd cases around the world, and looking at what do we see? What's the profiles of a fraudster, clues in the name there. It's what is the makeup? What are we seeing in terms of motivation, in terms of what does the person look like, not physically, but demographics, how do they get caught, etc. And my team, the data analytics team there, was responsible for gathering a lot of the data, collating it, and then giving out the stats that you see there.
Interviewing those culprits, is it like interviewing the culprits itself? Or?
No. So that would have been part of previous investigations done around the world. So at that point, you would have had an investigation sitting in Australia where you knew, okay, this was the culprit, this is how much they stole, this is how they did it, this is how they got caught, etc. So they're collecting all of that information from around the world. So I mean, it is all after the fact. I think the report was done in 2016. I think the cases were all from about 2013 to 2015, probably those. So it was recent at the time. And then, I mean, coincidentally, we started talking about this thing. It turns out KPMG put out a new one just a few months ago, 2025. So it was quite interesting. And I don't think it didn't look like it was done by the South African practice. So I looked at it and compare the two, and it's interesting how not much has changed.
Still the same?
A lot of it is still the same. It's interesting. So like, I mean, the three of us, biggest culprits.
Yes. I mean, it was kind of awkward when we did our prep. It was like, here's a service, We were all like, oh, okay.
That's all. I mean, we're underachieving. I mean, it's 80% of perpetrators were male. I think 36 to 50, 2/3 of them were 36 to 55 years old. I think it's about 2/3 also that had more than 6 years of service. If you look at more than 4 years of service, it goes up to about 75%, or probably closer to 80%. So it's tenured employees. But the interesting thing is, who do you trust? I mean, somebody comes into your organization for the first 3 years, first 2 years, whatever it is, you don't particularly trust them. But the guy who's been there for 6 years, that's the person you trust, and that's the person, and it makes sense because that's the one who's identifying loopholes, knows the systems, and the bulk of a lot of the firm, we spoke about why people have done it and how they rationalize it. But a lot of it is simply opportunistic.
Yeah.
You identify a gap and you exploit it, and it's simply because I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
There's that opportunity there.
Exactly. And again, who are the people that are able to do that? It's somebody who's been there for a while, also who's respected. So you're simply not expecting it.
And you would think that a fraudster is a bad person. It's this horrible person. It's not. Skulk, as you also said, it might be a good person, might be a great employee, but just doesn't make good decisions or makes self-interested decisions at that point.
And I mean, you spoke about rationalization. You spoke about the company owes me, and it's we've had investigations, and it's a person you don't expect, right? It's, and I know 80% are male, but I've come across at least 2. It's these old ladies that know everybody. They know all your children's names and birthdays, the lot. Nobody could possibly expect it, and they've been doing this for years. And it comes back to the element of trust, and the rationalization behind it is, well, I'm not getting paid enough, or, something like that.
In fact, I mean, that was one of the factors, why it's like, because I can. It's there's that opportunity. From our HR perspective, you would always think that for the HR team, it might be somebody that's going through a tough time or having to pay off bills. It's really greed. It's because I can. It's there's that opportunity. So very interesting.
Can I jump in there? I thought it was also interesting because when you ask people why do they climb Mount Everest, it's also because it's there. There's no good reason to go and climb Mount Everest. And it feels like there's a lot of fraud that's like, I have the opportunity, it's there. And I remember reading somewhere about a so-called cheater's high. And sometimes people just get having the feeling in a boardroom or wherever that I'm smarter than all of these. They don't even realize it. But I've pulled the wool over their eyes.
And what stood out for me was there was 3 things. It's the collaborative, and weirdly enough, so I'm thinking of all the cases that I've dealt with, actually the majority were single employees caught and dismissed eventually. So I'm really thinking, did we miss something in those cases? But the report really much speaks about collaboration. It takes more than one person to circumvent a process or a procedure and so forth. That was super interesting. And then motivators you spoke about, but also something interesting about, you would think that something like a fraud detection, facility is one of those memberships you're always going to pay, but there's not going to be any fruit from it. That was actually the top identifier or solution essentially to pick up fraud, right?
No, it's which is good news, I think, because it's probably one of the least expensive mechanisms, but your most frauds are still detected through someone knowing about it and saying something. I think the second biggest one was something like management review or selling Zunay. That means when your boss is focusing, when your boss is concentrating, then paying attention, then you can get it. But the speak up is still, which is why the ethics side again is so important, because you want people to feel comfortable to actually, there is a safe, effective mechanism to report, and that's still your best kind of on the detection side, your best way of doing it.
The other one was the data analytics, I mean, from an HR perspective, we've seen things at this moment like having to screen 600 CVs and trying to find more efficient ways to do that, even by using AI, for instance. But I mean, your team's capability to run through massive amounts of data, which would usually be the perfect opportunity to hide things, that has now, and I don't think people really realize the capabilities that there are to pick up things like that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, to go back to what Skulk said around effectively whistleblowing, right? That's the best way, and it's the biggest way that people are finding out about fraud. I think it's about a quarter through a formal whistleblowing line, and if you add informal tip-offs, it goes up to like almost 50%. And it goes back to that culture of ethics. So, I mean, if you have the culture, well, firstly, ideally, you don't want somebody to perpetrate the fraud in the first place. But secondly, is that if somebody else knows about it, they're comfortable enough to either anonymously or openly say, look, this is happening.
Something's wrong.
And the data analytics, that's the one obviously that fascinates me. So I looked at it and I compared it to the previous report. And I think the 2016 was around 3% that was picked up with data analytics. It's gone up to around 6%, which doesn't sound like much, but it's doubled if you think about it, right?
Massive.
And And I think part of the reason it's still so small, because it's effective, there's absolutely no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But the reason it's still so small is, again, back to what I said originally, it doesn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I don't need this. It's,
Yeah.
you know, it's a grudge purchase. It's like insurance, except people, I think, accept insurance a bit more. But to your point, right? If you're looking at the payroll of a mine,
Yes.
I mean, how easy is it to create 10 ghost employees in a complement of 6,000, 7,000?
Yeah.
And that's where you run analytics and you pick up,
Yeah.
you know, something that's gone wrong. I mean, we've had investigations where literally the clients called us and said, look, my financial director's just disappeared. I tried to make a payment of like 4 million rand. I don't have more 4 million in my bank account.
Yeah.
Can't find out what's happened. I mean, where do you even start?
Right.
And in the first place you start is you say, right, well, let me see every single transaction that's gone in and out of your account.
Yeah.
And you run analytics. You can't. It's not possible to go through every transaction.
Yeah.
And
Manually.
Yeah, exactly. So you have various routines. You have things you look for, and you pick up little red flags, and then you start following the trail.
Yeah.
And
Good
I mean,
point there. Yeah.
really, we've got to the bottom of many investigations with that approach.
It's really, it's for me personally, again, I go back to what I said. If I take our payroll consulting division, for instance, we previously didn't have the capabilities to validate information that was sent to us. So we would receive information. We've got certain protocols. You'll check for an ID. You'll ask for proof of banking details, blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of where it stopped. And this is now the first time where we've got a glimpse into the data coming, and where we can say to an executive, listen, you might think that your data is valid and secure. We can check for you, actually. And again, I'm closing the loop here from a labor law perspective to try to prevent those things. We can catch people quicker and eliminate that risk quicker, so which is quite cool.
But I think also I almost think one shouldn't be secretive about it, because it's a detective.
deterrent,
But it's also, if I know people are running,
Yeah,
if I think that I'm being watched,
yeah,
then I might think twice
Yes,
before
yes.
if I know they're gonna run some analytics and check,
yeah. Check out what's happening here.
then
That's
then
exactly.
maybe that signals also.
I think there was I think it was in Freakonomics or something. It was a study where they had this honesty cupboard. Where, you know, you somewhere in some company,
wrong.
and you go in, you take a suite, and you put the money in, and when they cashed up at the end of the month, they would always be short. And at some point, they put a picture of a pair of eyes on the cupboard, on the inside of the cupboard. And when the person took the sweet or chocolate, whatever it was, they found their shortfall was less.
Wow.
Even something like that, just psychologically.
There's supervision and there's
Yeah,
control.
yeah.
Well, that's the other thing that they speak of in that report, controls. I mean, that's one of the key preventative factors, is better controls. I think from a payroll perspective, you know, we're accustomed to those payroll controls, but in your business as well, you know, really to have a look at segregation of duties, et cetera, et cetera. Now, wow. I want to ask you, I mean, we're speaking Digicall Group, we're speaking KPMG, these are big corporations. There are dedicated departments to run this. Is fraud and ethics and what we're trying to do and discuss here only applicable to the big guys? Or, you know, what do the smaller companies do and what should they think about?
In the absence of all of these procedures and controls, you might think there's a bit more freedom, but more discretion to do unethical things. And I think it might be easier to put someone under pressure in smaller organizations. So it's definitely important there as well. But I don't think the ethics side is potentially easier, potentially less expensive to get the ethics side right.
Yeah.
Because what you need is people saying the right things and doing the right things. And things like speak up, whistleblowing lines aren't very expensive kind of things. In bigger organizations, you potentially need more supervision, more resources dedicated to surveillance. In these smaller organizations, I think on the ethics side, it shouldn't be as difficult. So first of all, I'm wondering if I spoke a bit too soon. So of course, ethics is important in small, medium enterprises, but what I suddenly realized is the pressure is probably also higher there. Because maybe in bigger organizations, if you've got a bit of a buffer before you're in trouble, but smaller organizations and if they're not getting paid on time by the places that they service, and I know this is often in the public sector, then they can very quickly be in trouble not being able to pay people. So I think getting the ethics message there is vital, because you might be under more pressure. From what is our responsibility? Do you mean what's like bigger organizations like us, not just looking at targets, but also looking at how we're making society better? You're speaking my language. There's a couple of ways that you do.
If I can interrupt.
Yes.
Somebody once asked Skull, "Are you a socialist?"
Oh, wow.
Are you a communist? I said, "Are you a communist?"
Yes.
Speaking his language.
Well, I think potentially I am.
But that's that's where that right decision. It's not just about myself now anymore. I've got to think about other things as well. You speak in the medical space. I can just imagine how relevant it is there. But in that moment, are you just serving yourself or your own interests? Is there a bigger picture to it?
Yeah.
So
when you were asking earlier, like ethics is the golden thread, I think it starts with, what does your business do?
Yeah.
And I think we're tempted to think a business's job is to make profit. If there's a market for it, if there's a gap and you can make profit, that's what you need to do. Maybe this is the communist socialist in me speaking, but sometimes want to ask myself, this business that I am part of, how does it contribute to the well-being of this society that I'm in? How does it contribute to human flourishing?
If I take our risk process in Digital Groups, obviously DigiForte being part of Digital Group, we do our quarterly meetings. And when I've got my management team with us, we always say, okay, what's the worst thing that can possibly happen? And we kind of try to map that out, decide what risk do we accept, what do we eliminate, and so forth. And I think often we accept risks too quicker, or we don't realize that there are capabilities to pick up these things. And Zedad, on your side, I mean, you've been instrumental in with our product, our launching of our Power of Fraud and analytical product. But you're also part of the digital ethics space. Can you maybe just tell us a little bit about that specific product and our whistleblowing capabilities?
So I think the fact that you're asking that question already puts you ahead of a lot of organizations. Again, back to, what we said is,
yes,
how many have their heads in the sand?
Yes.
And asking the question means, okay, so what do I actually do if I identify a risk or something that I need to worry about?
Yeah.
And that goes into the proactive space. And that's where proactive data analytics comes into play. Okay, well, I've got a payroll of 100 people, 1,000 people, 5,000 people, whatever it may be. What am I doing about it?
Yeah.
If it's small enough, I mean, I can have manual checks and I can look at it. But if it's bigger, you want something specialized. You want, somebody that's got the expertise in data analytics to critically analyze your payroll in this instance.
Yeah.
Look at known fraud behavior and pick up, potential red flags. And again, like I said before, you're not necessarily going to pick up instances of fraud immediately, but what you are going to pick up is a trail, a breadcrumb trail that you follow and, get to the end and say, well, hang on, I've got these 5 transactions that are really not right. And I mean, that's on a proactive side. And then you've got your reactive side again, which we said where whistleblowing is the typically the biggest way that fraud is detected.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's, in the Digicall group, we've got Advanced Score, which is our whistleblowing line.
Yeah.
Sit on that order of that because again it's my background from forensic, from analytics. It's something that I am passionate about. So like you say, I suppose I don't think anybody's ever said it before that they're part of the digital ethics.
Yes.
But yeah, I suppose in a way that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think it's that drive to combat it. I think again we see our clients often being on the receiving end, and I think it's exhilarating to think that there are actually ways that we can help these people meaningfully. And I think Skulk on your side with KPMG, I mean, releasing that the profile of a fraudster, there's so much intellectual property in that report by itself. But for KPMG, just to release that, I mean, the millions of people that you're helping us refine how we think about this and how we combat that is tremendous. Really, really tremendous.
Can I mention 2 things? I hope I remember the 2 things. The one is, we've been speaking about a simple, effective control. More than a quarter of frauds are picked up through people having a safe, effective way of reporting it, a kind of a whistleblowing line, a speak-up line.
Yeah.
Just to try and re-emphasize the ethics part, I'm often in a position where clients ask, come and do ethics training and awareness around the whistleblowing line. And I realize that doing that in the absence of a culture that supports whistleblowing can itself be reckless.
So, I don't know how far back I'm going to go. They'll probably be able to cut this. But we're speaking about there's this race to be first with AI. And I even met with one of our clients in January when we met there in software engineering as well. And when I met with the individual, he said to me that they're very anxious in terms of what's coming in terms of AI. He actually asked me, but what are you guys are doing on AI? And I said, no, man, we're people business. We don't have AI. 6 months later, it's like, oh, okay. But I could just see the urgency. And 7 months later, I can see why that urgency has been there. ChatGPT 5 just launched now, so it's going so quickly. And I'm just asking myself the question, are the people that are striving to be first or striving to claim to be first, considering all the possible consequences? We're dealing with people's lives in our space of business. Your take on it?
Yeah, I'm potentially in the wrong generation to answer this question because these things worry me. They worry me for a variety of reasons, but one of them just is the research I saw recently, but also because of my academic background, is that people who frequently use AI, there's some kind of a cognitive debt that's picking up. They might be quicker to deliver things to you, but if you ask them to repeat that on their own, and apparently how much their brain is firing while they're doing their work. There's even like MIT has done studies on kind of your brain involvement in the tasks that you're busy with. So I'm worried that our brains are rotting because of AI. Wow. But from a forensic point of view, listen, there's a lot of potential. I think the world, AI could make the world better if it cut out menial tasks. But then people might say, but you're not using the full kind of potential of AI. Yeah. So also the early prediction of fraud or the early detection of fraud, much like it's helping us to detect disease earlier.
Yes.
Those are the things that excite me. Yeah. Not so much the fact that it's making art, the fact that it's writing our reports for us. Yeah. Those things excite me. But in the world of forensic, the people have burnt their fingers already because of things like bias, because of things like false red flags, because of things like what's called hallucination.
Yes.
And we are making determinations about whether people are, and there are horror stories, the Midas examples. There's a lot of kind of early fraud or automated fraud detection, often in social grant spaces in places like the Netherlands, that lead to a lot of harm. So I'm all for that kind of the early detection, the early diagnosis, that kind of application. But there's a lot of kind of the ethics around AI will say you need a human in the loop, you need oversight, you need to kind of constantly check the reliability of models that degenerate over time. I want to say, let's go, but let's go slow and let's kind of hold the AI's hand while we're going along.
But you can understand. If you see how powerful this technology is.
Yes.
Some people have compared it to the advent of the internet or mainstream internet. Anyway.
Yeah.
You can understand why everybody wants to be first, but then all of those risks come. As the doctor said, we've got your biases, and it's exactly where we talk about profiling. And I know there was a case, or probably multiple cases in the US where profiled neighborhoods or high crime profile neighborhoods typically end up being black neighborhoods because again of the bias in the data that led to that. Yes. And not everybody accepts it. Not everybody thinks it's a problem, which in itself is
it is. It's not awareness of it. Yeah, exactly.
If you don't understand those risks, again, you come back to hallucinations. And in your world, you've had court cases where counsel has cited case law that doesn't exist simply because AI engine is hallucinated it.
Yeah.
So again, it's people's lives at stake. So the impact, both positive and negative, is massive. So it's not the time to rush into it. Yes, it's fine to be an early adopter, but it's how you do it.
Yeah.
In a contact center environment, there's a potential to say, okay, well, I can replace a ton of agents with AI. But firstly, is it something you want to do in a country
Should
with
I
a
be
high
doing this?
unemployment rate?
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. How does that make it a better country?
Exactly. Are we benefiting the whole? As we put it. And so the answer, I think, I'm no expert, but the answer here surely should be to complement, using AI to complement human beings in a form. And I know some companies what they're doing, and again, it's in the contact center environment, is they have their contact centers running the way they are, but they've got AI agents afterwards in the background, kind of summarizing calls, picking up trends, picking up issues that their customers are facing, and that helps. That kind of makes their employees more efficient without actually replacing them and mitigating the risks associated with AI.
On our side, we're exposed to a few clients in that space. To be able to give feedback to an agent quicker and to coach them quicker, it's impossible to coach 3,000 employees. So when we were speaking about this as a labor law team the other day, to have that capability, and so many jobs can be saved, and you can act quicker. The manual intervention is like every now and again there's a little blip of something happening. If you can have that capability of continuous feedback. But just to bring it back to, should I be doing it? I don't know if you guys saw, it was on the news now this week with, I think it's UCT actually, that in their academic space, they were monitoring for plagiarism and obviously use of artificial intelligence. And it looks like there's been a few false positives, if I can say that. A few students have been negatively impacted by that. So they're reviewing that policy of theirs. And during the discussion,
flagged as using AI
Exactly.
to generate, but they weren't. It was actually their own work.
100%. And now they've kind of paused on it to say, wow, so many students have been negatively affected by the policy. And on the flip side, when they spoke to the lady, I think it was on the news actually, she said, but should our students not be using this? Should we not be, just how do we do that ethically? And that's where it becomes a little bit.
No, it's also, what are you asking AI to make decisions on? If it's to make a decision on, Skalk, you might also we see you like this series.
Yeah.
You might also like, this music, then so what if they get it wrong?
Yes.
But if it's saying that person committed plagiarism or fraud, then you want someone saying, let's just check if this is actually the case before we
even approach the person.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
then you get to victimization.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly the example, that you gave at the end of the day. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that. I read an article about Chinese students using AI to beat AI detectors.
Yeah.
So exactly the same as you're saying in UCT, where they picking up was something plagiarized using AI. These lads have found a way of using AI, some sort of AI tech to actually fool those detectors.
Yeah.
But this is part of our lives, just to think and to see the capability. I think we all underestimated the capabilities up until most recently. So we've been keeping it above the belt now and very official, but I know everybody is dying to hear a few of our Gory stories. And so I'm not sure whether there is something that you can share or something that you can share on this podcast, but I think the two of you have seen horrific stories over the time of your life.
Well, I think we've seen interesting stories. So look, it's they're not funny because somebody's always been hurt. Again, I'm not hurting anybody.
No.
You're hurting somebody. That's the nature of fraud, right?
Yes.
Somebody's being prejudiced.
Yes.
But maybe examples of initiative or innovative techniques that people use. And it's one thing that the profile of the fraudster shows is that it's not just executives or management.
No.
The spread is across the board. So it's basically anybody who has the means or the opportunity to commit fraud. And I was involved in an investigation at a diamond mine, which you think diamonds are probably things to steal, right? No, it was diesel. There were guys stealing thousands of liters of diesel. And how they did it, it was a simple collaboration between the drivers delivering the diesel and the pump attendants receiving. And what they discovered is something as simple as if they stuck their hand inside the meter, they could turn the numbers manually.
Goodness.
And again, it's somebody who's been there for a while,
Knows how to. Yeah.
knows how to do it, knows the controls, knows that they've got to write down the number of the reading before and the reading after. That's how they calculate how much diesel was dispensed into the tank. Between the two of them, realized this is how how they're going to do it. So a truck would come up with like 30,000 liters of diesel that dispense 20,000, and then they'd spend the next 10 minutes turning the meter.
No.
for the next 10,000, and then the truck would drive off, stop off on the side of the road, sell off their diesel to somebody else, and they'd get a nice little split. And these are the sort of things that you'd see, from that sort of fraud to much more elaborate schemes like your Steinhoffs. And I mean, again, at KPMG, we also did a lot of public sector fraud. So if you want Gory and you want...
I just want to ask you, how did you guys pick that up? I mean, you were part of that investigation team, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, we actually started off with analytics, picking up, and we mapped every single delivery that came in, and also every single time fuel was dispensed. So they've got these mining trucks and all of that. So we were able to map what comes in, what goes out, and we started picking up the gaps. And then we started mapping the gaps to where did the gaps suddenly expand. Okay, they expanded at this particular point. So clearly this delivery wasn't what it should have been.
Wow.
And then you track it down back to people, and it's like, but when
Specific driver.
John Smith is on is on the pump, there's a jump. And then we actually got in touch with the trucking company as well, and they picked up after the fact that their trucks were stopping after delivering, sometimes after delivering diesel, they were stopping for like 10 minutes at a certain location before getting on. And something they wouldn't have ordinarily picked up.
Just being able to spot
And then they realized that's where, after they'd got the 10,000 there, that's where they basically fenced it off.
Yeah.
Somebody else was picking it up
Yeah.
and running off with it.
Wow. And deciphered it. So, I mean, you talk about manipulating the controls, but I mean, physically stealing the diesel.
So what would happen is the truck would come in with 30,000 liters, and that 30,000 should have ended up in the tank.
And then
What they did is only put 20,000 in the tank
Okay.
and spun the meter the next 10 or
And then
5 or whatever it was.
Wow.
And then the truck still had that remaining. So then it would go out, siphoned out from the truck into somebody else's.
Houses. And then off.
And off, yeah.
Wow.
One or two things. I'm hoping that it's not only executives listening to the podcast, but maybe some fraudsters as well. So here's a warning to the fraudsters that are listening. I once did this ethics training at a very big group, but the internal audit environment. And I was the normal spiel, telling them about how good people can do bad things. You know, you have to look at the environment. And internal audit is also audit the environment, because good people can also do bad things. And the head of internal audit said to me, Scott, we take that point, but don't underestimate the capacity for bad people to sometimes do good things.
Okay.
Like, what do you mean? And he said, like, so many of our tip-offs or some of the people that they've collaborated with that felt that they didn't get their fair share.
Wow.
So they start blowing the whistle. And they also had one or two cases where kind of a resentful spouse on a Friday evening after a couple of dops will phone in and say,
Oh
my
goodness.
husband is stealing from your organization.
Time to get even.
Hard to get even. So maybe just be careful who you collaborate with. Treat your collaborators fairly.
It's always an opportunity in the future. My side was very similar to logistics environment. So the logistics environment is rife with theft. I mean, you would have seen obviously with the hijackings of the trucks as well, fuel theft. So anyway, I get myself part of this investigation for one of my clients. There's probably 11 employees that's expected to be part of the syndicate. So what happens, we coordinate this whole session. I had to sit in for that, for the client at that point, and we had a few things to do. And as we get to the site, they say, you don't really know who's really involved. It's going to be a few people. We also know now from, from the report that there's multiple people involved. So we get there, and we've got this whole, it was polygraphs and da-da-da-da. So as we start the process, the one guy just chucks off and runs away and jumps over the wall. And that's why I said to my client, okay, well, we've got one. So I don't know if that counts as a confession or not, but yeah, it was the end of it for him. Listen, guys, but we at the end of this podcast, gosh, and we've now delved into AI also, which is a very, very interesting topic. Scott, just on your side, just for sharing your knowledge and your insights with us and for collaborating and really making this topic really fun, super thank you for that. You've been a fantastic guest here today, and I'm hoping we can do something in the future again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Enjoy catching up with...
And Zunaid, I'll catch up with Zunaid about the the stories that you haven't shared with me so far afterwards. But Zunayed, a massive privilege to have you as part of us. I can say DigiForte as well. We really consider ourselves as having a superpower in our team. So to you and your team, really, really amazing.
Yeah, that's far too generous. So thanks.
To our guests, I hope you've enjoyed this session. Please like and subscribe as always so that you can be notified of any contact. And if you would like to have some information about DigiForte, KPMG or Digicall, just reach out to us, and specifically for DigiForte at info@digiforte.co.za. Until next time, hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.